Václav Havel, the dissident playwright who helped bring down communism in Czechoslovakia, has died, aged 75. A new dawn for Iraq as U.S. troops file out of the country for the last time.
It just touches my heart to see our troops coming home. Job well done.
The Philippines appeals for food and medicine for the survivors of devastating floods. More than 650 people have died. Welcome to BBC World News. I'm Pune Gadusi. Also in this program, violence continues on the streets of central Cairo as protesters take to the streets and demand an end to military rule. And it's a messy masterclass as Barcelona are crowned World Cup champions once again. They beat Santos 4-0. Playwright, dissident, revolutionary leader, president, Nobel Peace Prize winner, all labels describing Václav Havel, who's died at the age of 75. He became Czechoslovakia's first democratically elected president after leading the non-violent Velvet Revolution of 1989 that ended 4 decades of communism rule. His assistant said he passed away at his weekend house in the northern Czech Republic. Ben Brown looks back at the life of one of the leading figures of European politics.
For Václav Havel and for his people, everything changed in November 1989, the year of Czechoslovakia's Velvet Revolution, when an extraordinary display of people power led by Havel proved irresistible and toppled the ruling communist regime. The world watched with astonishment as within weeks the dissident playwright became president. Václav Havel was born in 1936, and by his own admission he was a pampered child from a wealthy family. But when the communists came to power, he saw his family lose everything. With the 1960s came the Prague Spring, led by Alexander Dubček, the first flowering of reform and of hope for Czechoslovakia. Havel, now a successful playwright, could openly criticize old-guard Stalinists, satirizing them in drama that won instant worldwide acclaim. But in 1968, Soviet tanks crushed the dreams of Havel and his generation. Suddenly, his work was banned in Czechoslovakia. A few years later, he helped found the Charter 77 movement for democratic change. Václav Havel had become Czechoslovakia's most famous dissident, jailed for the alleged crime of anti-state activity, and even when he was out of prison, kept under constant surveillance by the secret police. But by the end of 1989, Havel found himself discussing the future of the nation with the very people who had sent him to jail. The Communist Party was disintegrating, democracy was taking its place. A grateful nation had only one choice for head of state, and in a solemn service at Prague's Roman Catholic Cathedral, Havel was duly installed. The prisoner turned president said afterwards that he'd never felt so absurd. And indeed, the fairy tale soon went sour. Slovakian nationalists campaigned for and won independence. Havel's beloved country divided into two. Its president was shouted down by demonstrators. He commented that after every party there's a hangover. Havel resigned the presidency only to be re-elected leader of the new Czech Republic a few months later. Never a natural professional politician, Havel was uncomfortable with the pomp and ceremony that surrounded him. He longed to return to full-time writing, which was perhaps why his people so loved and respected him. This, after all, was the man who had not only destroyed their communist oppressors, but who had managed to do so without bloodshed.
Jerzy Schneider is first Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. I asked him how the Czech people are receiving the news of Václav Havel's death.
I can hardly speak how it will be taken by the Czech public because we are still at shock, although it's been known that President Havel's health was in poor shape for at least recent months. So I think there is still a sense of shock and gloom. And I think it will take days before it will be actually realized what happened and who is missing, actually.
As a hero of the non-violent movements, which later became famous as the Velvet Revolutions, something that we have been witnessing in several other spots around the world in the past year or so as well, what do you think is his international presence or importance globally?
I think President Havel was at the right moment, at critical moment, a uniting figure, which who was able to actually make these remarkable changes happen, as you said, without violence and smoothly. He was a person who united, although later on, I think, when he entered politics, which is divisive by nature, I think, of course, he was criticized and he was felt more uniting, I think, from abroad than from at home. I think he was an extremely important person and politician to put Czechoslovakia and later on Czech Republic on the political map. It wasn't just getting rid of the former communist system, but he was very important. I think without him, it would be much harder to get Czech Republic and other countries in the region into NATO and European Union back to the family of free nations. I think that's his achievement, and we will remain grateful to him.
Just a few years ago, there were 170,000 U.S. troops in Iraq. Today, the final few hundred trickled out of the country, though a small presence will remain at the U.S. Embassy. It's the end of a painful era for the U.S. and the start of an uncertain one for Iraq, as Jim Muir reports from Baghdad.